Business time then. Owen here with European markets extending an impressive January.
We've had the DAX up 10% in January Street. In fact, many markets around the world are having their best or had their best January, certainly for the last 10 years or so. The Dow, for example. European markets up once again this Wednesday morning, all up between 0.5% and around 0.8% in Paris, London, and indeed Frankfurt. A little bit more choppy on the Asian markets. The Nikkei did manage to reverse a few losses, I should say, to end the day just slightly in the green. But you can see there Shanghai and Hong Kong down as much as 1%.
And Sharp extends another tough earnings season for Japan's household names.
Yeah, all the big ones, all the big household names in Japan have had a pretty tough earnings season, it's got to be said. And Sharp is no exception. In fact, turning nearly a 200 billion yen loss for the full year for 2007. Other Japanese companies, Nomura notably, had a better time of it in the third quarter. Profits up around 33%. And you can see at the top of our, or just in the middle of our board there, Roche, the Swiss cancer drugs manufacturer as well. Third quarter earnings up as well, around a similar sort of margin, around 20% or so.
Next then, finding friends on Wall Street for Facebook, the social networking site, reportedly going to begin the paperwork to float on the stock market this Wednesday. Facebook has yet to comment, but that hasn't stopped an investor frenzy reaching fever pitch. Big question, of course, can it actually make any money?
Well, this is the only question really you're going to ask yourself if you're an investor, and the only question that investors are going to ask of this company right now. Of course, just tune out the hype just for a moment. We've been talking for the past year or so about how much this company might be worth, maybe as much as $100 billion. Well, nobody really knows until they start to trade. And as you say, is it a good investment ultimately? Well, there are a few concerns if you're thinking about getting into Facebook, whether or not it begins that flotation this Wednesday. It's on course, of course, to be the biggest tech IPO ever, with a market cap of maybe as much as $100 billion. It's probably likely to be a little bit less than that once the hype has died down. The other concern, of course, is what's being called Facebook fatigue. Has this company peaked? Now, last year, during the middle of last year, we did see users dropping off just a little bit. It has 800 million users worldwide. There are concerns over its durability. Will it tail off? Well, the answer to that is maybe not. In emerging countries like China, like India, you're seeing Facebook growing by more than 100%. Countries like Egypt as well, where social networking plays such a crucial part in the Arab Spring. So in those kind of countries, there is still growth to be had. It looks like there's no signs of that abating. The other perhaps concern as well is going public is going to heap more pressure on Mark Zuckerberg, particularly among advertisers and among censors in countries like China. We know that Facebook ran into a little bit of trouble in the US over the past 12 months or so, concern about how much of your data they're using to entice advertisers to target, basically, individual Facebook pages. So that will be a concern.
Got some business advice for you. Wait and see.
Well, yeah, it does appear to be the best advice right now because, of course, we know that Facebook is going to drive up the hype. We know that in the months to come, there will be this huge frenzy. Ultimately, the only people that can afford to buy into Facebook right now are those private investors who've got a few $1 billion to spare and can really buy into this company before the rest of us get a look at it. But of course, as we saw with Google back in 2004, massive valuation, it disappoints a little bit. It's likely that the best strategy really is to just wait and see how this stock performs perhaps in 6 months or so.
Right, well, next, the UK's banking bogeyman. He's been stripped of his title. So Fred Goodwin became the face of public outrage over fat cat salaries after RBS, the bank he ran, went bankrupt in 2008. But in a sign of how attitudes are changing towards bank bonuses, he's lost his knighthood. Florence Villeneuve has more.
Sir Fred, no longer. Queen Elizabeth has stripped former Royal Bank of Scotland boss Fred Goodwin of his knighthood. Dubbed Fred the Shred by tabloids, Goodwin joins a select gang of disgraced figures who have lost the high honor, including Mussolini and Robert Mugabe. The decision was welcomed by politicians across the board.
Well, it's right that Fred Goodwin lost his knighthood, but I think it's only the start of the change we need in our boardrooms. We need to change the bonus culture, and we need real responsibility right across the board.
Goodwin was knighted in 2004 for services to banking, but in 2007 he steered RBS to near collapse with the catastrophic buyout of a Dutch bank. Reckless management that helped trigger the 2008 crash in the UK with thousands of job losses and a government bailout and nationalisation to the tune of £45 billion. Goodwin sparked further public fury for the lavish taxpayer-funded pension he took with him when he left.
RBS came to symbolise everything that went wrong in the British economy over the last decade. The focus of the current government is to make sure we get back the taxpayers' money that was used to rescue the bank.
Meanwhile, last week, politicians and public opinion were fuming over Goodwin's successor at RBS, Stephen Hester, who was set to receive a £1 million bonus. A bonus Hester has since turned down.
Now, of course, if the Queen wants to give Stuart or I a knighthood, she'd be very welcome. You fancy that?
I wouldn't mind.
Sir Norval. It's got a certain ring to it.
Perfect.
Let's pick up on a few more of the day's business headlines for you now. French defence contractor Dassault is on the verge of securing its first foreign sale for the Rafale fighter jet. The firm's been given preferred status by the Indian government for a $20 billion deal to supply 126 Rafales. It's beaten the Eurofighter Typhoon to the front of the queue, though analysts have warned that the deal has not been signed and is likely to involve months of negotiations.
Investors in Greek bonds are being offered a sweetener tied to the country's revival to offset their write-down. Sources quoted by Bloomberg say bondholders will receive a GDP product warrant that would pay them dividends if the Greek economy rebounds. Now, it would mean investors accepting just 3% interest on new 30-year bonds as part of a new bailout deal for Greece. The government still negotiating with investors, determined to hold out for at least 3.5%. And it's curtains to crude oil in Japan, at least for ExxonMobil. The American company is selling its stake in refining operations in the country for nearly $4 billion. As costs continue to rise and demand dwindles, Exxon is looking to new horizons to fill out its balance sheets, even. That's the word. Jen Carswell explains.
Tapped out. Rising costs and diminishing consumption prompted the $3.9 billion sale of refinery operations to its Japanese partner, Tonin General.
The Japanese market is getting tougher. The decision-making within the company will be more effective in the newly integrated production distribution operation.
The success of greener vehicles is changing the market. Toyota's hybrid Prius is the fastest-selling car in Japan, over 1 million vehicles sold since it first went on sale. Good for the environment, bad for refiners, as gas consumption has dropped as a result. It's a similar story in the West. Earlier this year, Swiss refiner Petroplus pulled out of France, while BP and Shell announced the sale of a number of refineries. And deeper reserves in even more challenging regions, like the Arctic and Siberia, mean devoting even more resources to finding black gold.
That's it from us for now. Don't forget, you can always find Owen on Twitter. Lord Fairclough of Paris, he's under. You'll find him there.
Let me know what you think about that Facebook IPO. Is it really worth it? Is it a good buy? I'd love to hear your views. There are my Twitter details. I'll forget the Lord for right now. Maybe one day.
Lord Fairclough, we thank you. He'll be back. More business news tomorrow morning. Lady Pride, in fact, is here very shortly with the latest news here on France 24. Stay with us.